Hello, this is Virtualis the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. In this game, my white knight pair, the dynamic duo, the bros, absolutely crush the Scandinavian defense. Have a look at this game. So I had the white pieces in this game, as usual, e4, and my opponent plays d5, the Scandinavian defense. Scandinavian defense, perfectly good defense for black. Here I almost always take. They take back with queen, knight to c3, pressuring the queen. And what is black going to do? In this game, my opponent brought the queen all the way back to d8. Now, this is an established line of theory, but I've always been somewhat dubious with this line because white has basically just gained a move. This knight has developed in a perfectly sensible location, and now I get to play a second move. None of black's pieces are basically developed. Now, when one of the options here is for the queen to go to a5, the queen a5 line, and if you look at the Lichess community database of lower rated games of Blitz and Rapid, in that position, white and black has an equal win ratio, about 48% each. While with the queen back to d8 line, white actually has a substantial advantage, so 50% win rate compared to 45% for black. Stockfish seems to agree, so if you look at Stockfish's evaluation at a reasonably high depth, it gives it a plus 0.9, so almost plus 1. And given that there's material equality, this means it's purely based on the position. How I usually play this with white is to try to take advantage of the increase in tempo and try to develop rapidly. So immediate d4. Opponent now develops their knight. I develop my knight to f3, and they try to develop their other knight symmetrically. If we look at the Stockfish evaluation, this is actually an inaccuracy, potential mistake, plus 1.3. So white has gained a substantial advantage. And this is one of the things with playing the Scandinavian. You really do need to learn some theory. I believe here the best move was potentially developing the black bishop, taking advantage of the fact that the d pawn is already missing. Now here, I don't play the most accurate move, which I think was just developing my bishop. As I said, basically for white, just develop, play normal developing moves. Instead here, I thought I have an attacking chance on that knight and potentially sort of taking control of the center, given that none of black's pawns are developed. So I play a d5. Here, the opponent sort of thinks for a little bit. They can't simply take because otherwise I take back, and then of course the queen cannot take back. So they play the best move, which is advancing their knight forward to b4 and basically putting an extra attacker on that pawn. So 3 attackers. However, I can now develop my bishop. Again, a perfectly natural developing move, adding an extra defender, so 3 defenders, 3 attackers, and given that they lose a knight potentially for a pawn, if they attacked first, they would end up losing that exchange. The opponent now really needs to put yet another attacker on that pawn, which basically means playing e6. However, they didn't see that move. Instead, I think what they were thinking was they had to develop, but it looks like things were a little bit cramped. They were worried. One of the advantages with the pawn all the way on the 5th rank is that these pawns seemingly can't develop without potentially losing material. And I think black had a bit of an aversion to that. And so how are they going to develop potentially these bishops? So my opponent now played b6. I think the plan was to fianchetto that bishop. However, this move is too slow. This was a straight up blunder, plus 5 now for white. Why is it so bad? Well, remember that knight? It's a bit offside. Yep, a3, attacking the knight, and this knight is almost trapped. So if it can't really take because, it'll just get taken back and, it's not in a favorable position. Can't go back here, otherwise it's going to be taken. Can't really go here, otherwise it'll be taken by a number of pieces. So black is forced to make a backwards knight move to the edge of the board, a6, at least it's defended by that bishop. But now I've got the move bishop to b5 with check along this weakened diagonal. And, black has basically got a big problem. See that? Almost +6. Effectively, it's like they've lost that rook. So let's say they push that pawn. I could take, that would now come with check, and the bishop now captures that rook. If they try to block with the bishop, I straight up just take, their knight. And so eventually, black decided to block the check with the knight, simultaneously pinning that knight to the king. This was a mistake for black. As you can see, almost +9, +10, because if you looked at how cramped the black's position is, it's a problem, particularly given that I'm attacking with these knights. The thing about knights is that their attacks are not impeded by intervening pieces. It makes them really, really powerful in cramped positions. I now push my knight forward to e5, ostensibly placing extra pressure on the pinned piece. My opponent tries to give an extra defender to the knight, but I'm not going for the knight. This queen is basically smothered. It cannot move because it's surrounded by its compatriots. Knight to c6 will capture the queen. And that is, in fact, what I play. And to understand how bad this position is, Stockfish actually calls this move a mistake, even though it's +8. And that's simply because I had another move, queen to f3, which actually allows for a forced mate in 7 moves. Now, I don't see forced mates in 7 moves, but just so that you can see what that potentially would look like, so knight back to this position, queen forward, there ends up being some shuffling. Effectively, there is a potential, mate in 1 threat there. The opponent can't come back, remember, that knight is pinned. And so there's a bunch of shuffling now where basically black tries to delay checkmate for as long as possible, push, capture, they can't capture back because, that will just they sort of lose a piece, come back, now we've discovered check, try to block, take the pawn, they try to attack, check, have to block with the rook, and now the king has nowhere left to go and it's mate. But, that sort of shuffling sequence I think is very, very hard to see, at least for me. So I instead play this move, attacking the queen. I thought that was a pretty brilliant move, to be perfectly honest. They counterattack the bishop. That's fine. Queen is definitely worth more than the bishop. They take. Knight jumps straight back. So this is sort of a very powerful position for my knight. They sort of potentially, I think they were thinking of castling. I'm not too sure because I don't think they really wanted to capture because potentially that would be mate again. I now capture that pawn with my knight. The opponent is in some serious trouble. I think they were thinking, oh look, maybe I need to fianchetto that bishop. Just like on the other side, this was a serious blunder because it's just not fast enough. But here they hang mate in 1. Can you see the mate in 1? That's right. Knight jumps forward. The king is trapped on the back rank, has nowhere to go. The 2 knights, the dynamic duo, side by side, create a checkmate that almost seems impossible. Good game, GG. The big takeaway from this game is that if you play the Queen d8 line in the Scandinavian, you have to learn some theory. I hope you enjoyed this video and thanks for watching.